guys. Today we're going to talk about antibiotic and pesticide resistance. And so these topics are really cool because they deal with common problems in everyday society that happen right now, especially with like coronavirus, things like that. It is important to talk about healthcare, things like that, medicine. And then also pesticide resistance deals with agriculture, and so it is a big problem with agriculture and growing crops and things for us to eat. So both of these will deal with evolution. But before we get into that, let's kind of review what a bacteria is. So bacteria were the first organisms to evolve on Earth. This happened about 3.5 billion years ago, so kind of maybe a long time ago for some people, because 3.5 billion years is a good bit. And bacteria are prokaryotic, so if you think back to your cells unit, that means that they do not have any membrane-bound organelles, and they are what we call simple. Okay, so that's what you need to think of when you think of bacteria, because with antibiotic resistance, we're talking about bacteria in terms of that. Okay, so for your notes, we are right here on the last page. You should start with the word antibiotic. It's under the picture of the little doggies. Okay, so antibiotics, I'm sure you've taken some in your lifetime at some point. These are medicines that stop infections by killing bacteria. Now, bacteria are not viruses, so you should not be taking an antibiotic if you have a viral infection. So if you would have, let's say you have COVID-19, that's a virus. So antibiotics will not work against viruses because viruses are not bacteria. They're two different things. Okay, so antibiotics deal with only bacteria. Bacterial and antibiotic resistance is due to evolution, greatly due to evolution. And something else to note is when you guys think bacteria, you think that they're always bad, but that's definitely not the case. So if you've ever taken a probiotic or if you've eaten yogurt and you notice on the side that it says S. Borrelia or something like that, that's a type of bacteria. And so you need those in your gut and to help your immune system, to help you digest food, all that good stuff. So there's actually a lot of bacteria out there that are really helpful. However, there are some that are harmful, and so one of the most harmful types would be Staphylococcus aureus, which can give you a staph infection. So if you've had a staph infection, that one can get pretty nasty. And then we have another one called MRSA, which is basically a super bacteria. There's not much out there that kills it because it's resistant to basically everything. So we're going to talk about kind of how that arose, and that was due to human involvement, 100%. Okay, so it is important to note that populations do have variations. That's because mutations are random, and so they're just randomly going to happen, and that's why I don't look like any of you. And we also kind of have different DNA, but that's a different topic. Okay, so there's going to be variations within a population, even if they're the same species. If you look at the population of humans in your house, there's variations. Okay, so when bacteria are going to be exposed to antibiotics, the point of it is to kill off the bacteria, because if you have those bad bacteria, you're going to get an infection, and that could be harmful to your health. Well, unfortunately, you can't kill off all the bacteria. You kill off most of them. If you look at your hand sanitizer, it says kills 99.99%. What about that 0.01%? That 0.01% doesn't get killed, it survives. And so if it's surviving, it probably has some sort of gene, some sort of trait that makes it resistant to the antibiotic. Well, if you have like 2 of them who survive, they're going to then reproduce, and now you have a population where most of your bacteria are resistant to that antibiotic. Okay? So this is just going to walk you through an example of how it happens. So let's say you're sick, you have a cut, and they want to give you antibiotics just to make sure that it doesn't get infected. Okay, fine. The antibiotic will kill the bacteria that cannot defend themselves, and that's going to be most of the bacteria. However, it does not kill all. So if you look at this image, which you have in your notes, these guys right here, unfortunately, have a defense mechanism that makes them resistant, and they survive. All the other ones die off, but these two survive. Well, when they survive, guess what bacteria love to do? They love to reproduce. So now you have a whole population of these resistant bacteria. That's scary. So that's actually how MRSA was created. And so MRSA basically is a super intense staph infection, and it's resistant to antibiotics because we've used all these antibiotics and we've overused them. We've given them to people when they don't need them. If you take antibiotics and you don't need them, that's killing off good and bad bacteria. However, it's leaving certain bad bacteria that are immune to that antibiotic. And so something really important to note is if you ever take antibiotics, you need to take the full dosage. If you start feeling better, that does not mean you can stop taking it, because you are then going to leave the bacteria that weren't killed off if you don't finish your prescription. So that is something really important to think about next time you take antibiotics, is that you really do need to finish the whole dosage. You cannot stop halfway once you start feeling better. Okay, antibiotic resistance deals with evolution because the organisms that are most adapted to their environment, meaning the bacteria that have the ability to fight off the antibiotic, have the best traits, and they're more likely to survive and reproduce. So this is like the epitome of natural selection. If you are killing off 90% of the bacteria, the 10% of bacteria you're not killing off are going to have the trait that makes them immune. That's selecting the immune bacteria. So that's not good. You don't want to do that. But unfortunately, that's what has happened in the history of probably the last 100 years. Is antibiotics have been super overprescribed for things that you don't need them for. And due to that, we have a really big problem with antibiotic resistance in medicine today. Let's see if this tells anything else. Something else unique is the process allows resistant strains to evolve from non-resistant strains. So basically what that means is if you have a population of bacteria and you have one little guy who's immune, all of them are going to die off except for that one little guy. Then that little guy is going to reproduce, and now you have a whole population that's resistant. Again, really bad problem. Okay. Another thing that is going on with evolution and is a current problem in today's society is going to be pesticide resistance. So pesticides are what are used to kill off pests like insects off plants in agriculture. So there's something most of the time that you would spray on the plants. If you have something organic, they are not, or they have not been sprayed with pesticides. So organic just means that pesticides have not been used on that product. Anyways, so if you have pesticides and you spray a whole crop, let's say you're spraying an acre of corn, okay, and your goal is with that pesticide to kill all the bugs because the bugs eat the corn and the corn is meant for you to sell, make money, feed people, etc. Well, that pesticide is not going to kill all the bugs. It may kill most, it may kill 90, 95%, but again, just like with the bacteria, that means you have 10% remaining, 5% remaining, and those remaining are the ones that are immune to the pesticide. So you have two options when that happens. You can either increase the pesticide dosage, which means you spray even more, or you can use a new pesticide. Both come with their own problems. If you're using more pesticides, that's really bad for the environment. It washes off into the shores, into bodies of water, that it starts affecting fish, things like that. And then also if you're having to use all these different pesticides, you may run out. These bugs are going to become superbugs. They're going to be immune to everything we have, just like MRSA, that bacteria. So this is a really big problem. And the reason why some insects are immune is because they have random mutations. It's not because they're just sitting there and they're like, you know what? I know I'm about to be sprayed with this toxic stuff, so I'm going to develop a trait, okay? No, that's what Lamarck would say. Lamarck was not right. Lamarck said that people acquire traits in their lifetime. That's not what happens. So they have to be born with that trait, that allows them to be resistant to the pesticide. So let's say they're born with something that prevents the pesticide from entering their body, so they're immune. Well, then they're going to survive and reproduce, aka natural selection is happening, and when they survive and reproduce, that trait gets passed to their offspring. So we're going to shift towards a population that is more pesticide resistant. And so over time, if you keep using pesticides, they become less and less effective because you're shifting the population. Definitely some directional selection happening here. You're shifting the population towards pesticide resistant insects. And so this gets really dangerous, it gets expensive, and it's a really big problem. And so there's a huge industry in agriculture that is focused on figuring out ways to reduce insects and things like that, but with natural methods. So sometimes you may release insects that eat other insects. With that comes other complications though, because you don't want to introduce an invasive species because then you're in big trouble if that happens. So this is definitely a hard issue. There's not really any great answers to it, but that's why I have faith in you guys, because I know that one of you will figure out what we should do about pesticide resistance, antibiotic resistance, etc. So again, if you ever have questions, please reach out to email me. I love you guys. I miss you. And please stay safe.